the hum of the engine. August 1944. The American advance across France is not measured in miles, but in gallons. General George S. Patton's Third Army is a spearhead of steel and fury, slashing through the collapsing German lines at unprecedented speed. But a blitzkrieg, American style, has a single, absolute requirement: fuel. Patton's demand: 400,000 gallons of gasoline a day. But the supple ports are hundreds of miles behind him. The railways are bombed out. Trouble. The momentum, the very heart of the victory, is about to stall. German generals, watching their broken armies flee, felt a surge of grim relief. They knew the Western Allies, with their mechanized armies, would soon run out of gas. German General Alfred Jodl famously mocked American logistics, referring to their reliance on machines as a sign of decadence. They laughed at the concept of American supply. They forgot one thing: America had an industrial base built to solve impossible problems. They were about to meet the most unlikely, audacious, and historically vital logistical solution of the entire war. They were about to meet the Red Ball Express. The crisis of success. The planning failure. The Allies had meticulously planned Operation Overlord. But the plan, by its very nature, was conservative. It estimated that the main forces would reach the Seine River roughly 90 days after D-Day. When the German 7th Army was encircled in the Falaise pocket in mid-August 1944, the timetable was violently accelerated. The forces, particularly Patton's newly activated Third Army, broke free of the Normandy hedgerows and launched the Great Pursuit. This success created a profound strategic crisis. The armies were now moving 50 to 80 miles a day, but their supplies were still back on the invasion beaches and the damaged port of Cherbourg. The calculus of need: to sustain a war of movement, the Allied armies needed a relentless flow of material. An average American infantry division required about 750 tons of supplies per day. With dozens of divisions in the field, the daily requirement was crushing, over 25,000 tons total. Of this, fuel, petroleum, oil, and lubricants, coal was the most critical and most immediate shortage. Patton, famously aggressive, was radioing back desperate, almost pleading messages: "My men can eat their belts, but my tanks have to have gas." The entire offensive risked operational culmination, the point where a military force can no longer advance because its logistical tail has broken. Without a solution, the German army would have time to reorganize and build an impenetrable defense line on the German border. The entire war could be prolonged for months, maybe years. The stakes were existential. The clock was ticking. The Red Ball Express is born. The 36-hour blueprint, 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, on August 25, 1944, in a desperate 36-hour planning session, the Allied command forged the solution. It wasn't a clever new weapon or a brilliant tactical maneuver, it was pure, audacious organization. It was the Red Ball Express. The name came from the American railroad tradition, where a red ball marked a priority express shipment. The plan was simple, brutal, and effective: a dedicated, one-way loop of highways, stretching 350 miles from the depots in Normandy to the front lines near Chartres and beyond. The northern route was exclusively for outbound traffic, the southern for the empty return. No civilian traffic, no unauthorized military vehicles. Red Ball only. The army on wheels. The scale was staggering. At its peak, the Red Ball Express employed nearly 6,000 trucks, predominantly the robust 2.5-ton GMC CKW cargo truck, nicknamed the Jimmy. These trucks were driven in continuous, 24-hour convoys, averaging 12,500 tons of supplies daily. To staff this enormous logistical machine, the army scoured the rear echelons for drivers. The vast majority of the 23,000 personnel involved came from the segregated, non-combat service units. Approximately 75% of the drivers were African American soldiers, the unsung heroes. These men, who were barred by racist army policies from fighting on the front lines, suddenly found themselves on the most dangerous road in Europe. Their duty was grueling, requiring 36-hour shifts, sometimes driving on as little as 2 hours of sleep. They faced unimaginable fatigue, driving in columns 60 yards apart at speeds up to 25 miles per hour, often faster, and at night, using only dim cat-eye headlights to avoid the rare but deadly German Luftwaffe attacks. They battled snipers, hijackers, and the simple, grinding mechanical failure of overworked trucks. The risk of accidents was enormous, but they kept to their motto, "Keep 'em rolling." This was not a glorious combat charge. This was a war of endurance fought on a narrow asphalt road. Every one of those 5,958 trucks, driven by men who were often denied the dignity of equal service, was a lifeline, carrying the fuel, the ammunition, and the food that kept the most celebrated white generals moving. The gasoline blitz. The results were immediate and transformative. The Red Ball Express delivered the essential pull that Patton desperately needed. His tanks, having been starved for days, surged forward, sweeping into the Saar region. The sudden, relentless re-energizing of the Allied thrust caught the disorganized German forces completely off guard. The German generals' laughter turned to stunned silence. Their supply chain was collapsing under Allied air superiority. The American supply chain, a road of rolling steel, was surging past its own crisis. The race to the German frontier was back on, fueled by the sheer force of American industry and the tireless grit of its segregated servicemen. The lifeline that defined victory. The end of the road, the Red Ball Express was never meant to be permanent. It was a stopgap, a massive improvisation designed to buy time. It operated for 83 critical days, from August 25 to November 16, 1944. Its replacement came in two forms: the reopened ports, the capture and eventual clearing of major ports, particularly Antwerp, dramatically shortened the supply lines and allowed massive volumes of material to be moved closer to the front. Pluto, the secret pipeline under the ocean and its overland extensions, began pumping fuel closer to the front lines, replacing the need for millions of jerrycans. But without the Red Ball Express bridging that critical gap, the momentum would have been lost. The German retreat would have become an organized defense. The strategic legacy. In total, the Red Ball Express moved over 412,000 tons of supplies. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, acknowledged its indispensable role, calling it the lifeline between combat and supply, without which the armies might fail. The operation cemented the reality that the true American military advantage was not just its ability to fight, but its industrial capacity to sustain a fight on a global scale. While German logistics relied on railroads and over 1 million horses, American logistics relied on the mass production of the 2.5-ton truck, a weapon more decisive, perhaps, than the Sherman tank itself. It showcased the power of American transportation doctrine, a doctrine that was far from a joke. The hidden cost of victory. The story of the Red Ball Express is more than a tale of trucks and fuel. It is a profound lesson in the often overlooked mechanics of modern warfare, and the complex human story behind the lines. It is the story of the African-American soldier, denied the glory of the front lines by an unfair system, who nevertheless embraced the most arduous, dangerous, and strategically vital task of the European campaign. They were the engine of the American blitzkrieg, driving with courage and determination that belied the institutional racism they faced every single day. When we remember the great triumphs of World War II, D-Day, the breakout, the race to the Rhine, we must remember the silent, constant, and exhausting effort that made it all possible. We must remember the 23,000 men, mostly black, who drove into the night, keeping the entire war machine alive. They didn't just fuel Patton's tanks, they fueled the victory of the Western Allies. The German generals learned their lesson too late. They saw only the decadence of a motorized army. They failed to grasp the boundless, industrial determination that could turn a vast, chaotic battlefield into a highly efficient, high-speed logistical highway. It was the simple, relentless hum of the Red Ball engine that truly signaled the end of the Third Reich.